Welcome to Kingdom Coffee Talks. This is my official first interview, and I got the huge blessing of a yes from Robert. And we are just going to kind of unroll as we go and figure out what this is. I feel the joy of the Lord on this. I feel excited and just God's timing. He's doing so many things and so many people, and we get to be a little part of all that he's doing. I'm just super thrilled and tickled. So, who's Robert? Robert Johnson. I have to tell you, I first got connected with Robert. I don't know, actually, it was like, I don't even know how long ago. Do you remember? 4 years?
Probably about 4 years.
About 4 years. Okay, that's what I was thinking. I drove up to my house right out here, and I was about to get out of the car, and this bird just came at my windshield, jumped on my windshield wiper, and I was like, okay, Lord, what in the world is this? And I just knew it was God. Like he was like just showing me something. So I just waited, and the bird just chilled and stared at me and then flew off. So then that evening, I go to this meeting that I was invited to at Linda Scott Bell's house.
I remember.
And there was this man, Robert Johnson, and Greg Dietering. And Robert starts sharing, and all I can say is just in my spirit, I'm like, who is this man? Wow, Lord, you have blessed this man. You obviously speak through him. You love him. I just felt this instant connection. Like, I need to stay connected. And he ends up sharing that lots of people call him the Birdman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just floored. And then, right as he's sharing, this bird comes in and it literally circles above us, like, I don't know, 3 times and flies off. And I'm literally just, what in the world, Lord? You are awesome. So that was our first meeting. After the meeting, I kind of shared with him real quick that, and he gave me some encouragement and confirmed that's the Lord. We didn't really know why we're connecting, but something. And then he also prayed over me, and I ended up on the floor getting delivered from something and healed. And so I've tried to catch him wherever he ends up going, and we've met in different circles. So it's just been fun. God is uniting his people in different ways, different circles. I just see all these after getting to know him a little bit more and then hearing some of his stories. I personally know and feel that Robert Johnson is a prophet. And I guess I would like to start there with you, with just asking, would you agree? Would you call yourself a prophet? And if so, tell me what that means to you.
Well, in the beginning, it started in 1989. I traveled quite a bit to different countries, and when it started, it more seemed like I was an evangelist. I really didn't think too much about who am I, or there's a job to do. There's these things in front of me. I'm just going to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really didn't give a whole lot of thought to that
Right.
until about 1996 when I was put into a situation in Brazil. It was about 1,000 miles from Sao Paulo, which is the second largest city in the world. We went inland. And as we went in, there was the whole state. It was called Espírito Santos, which is the state of the Holy Spirit.
That's cool.
And they have huge rivers in Brazil, and the river was no more than I could just step over it.
Hmm.
And everything was shriveled up and dried up. And so I thought, I've been a farmer all my life, either farming the ground. The last years were in a greenhouse business. I love growing things. So I asked my interpreter, I said, well, what's going on here? He said, well, they have a drought 5 years, no rain.
Wow.
Well, I felt for the people. It was a agricultural state. Their coffee plantations were shriveled up. The banana
Mm.
trees were just all wilted. Everything was it was terrible.
Mm.
And I would have to probably go into the story how it all switched. I guess I could do this one, but
Okay.
I my heart really went out to these people because I understood what this must be like to that's your living,
Mm.
and we have nothing. We're
Mm-hmm.
coming to the end of everything. The whole state. If you don't have water, it doesn't matter what business you're in.
Yeah,
You're
that's true.
done. Whether you're in the cattle business or you have some kind of store, I mean, you all have to have water.
Mm-hmm.
So I was supposed to speak in this stadium. It was a big cement structure, and my friend was with me, and it was a holiday weekend. And I don't know why in Brazil, if you're in a small town, everybody leaves. They go somewhere else for their vacation. And so the stadium held over 10,000 people. 300 people came because there was nobody left in the town.
Oh man.
So the sound system was terrible because the sound bounced off of all the cement.
Right.
And so my friend, he was so discouraged. He says, when we get back to the big city, I'm getting on the first jet and I'm leaving, I'm going home. And it was discouraging.
Yeah.
And they had big banners up with our names on it and everything, welcoming us, 300 people. And I think about 30 people received the Lord in that group.
10%. That's
Yeah.
good.
So we went out into the country and we slept that night, and the next morning I came out and there was all these mother chickens. There's a reason I'm relating back to birds.
Okay.
And then I saw, there was 5 or 6 mother chickens, but they all had 15 to 17 babies each.
Oh wow.
And I go, hold it a minute. Immediately that caught my attention. I said, this is not normal. That's the wrong amount.
Hmm.
And the Lord knew that I would notice that right away
Hmm.
because I'm the bird man.
Yeah.
And he put me in a situation of farming, put me in a situation with no rain for 5 years. And so I asked the question, my interpreter says, does a hawk ever come down and take one of the baby chicks? Because that would be normal anywhere else.
Hmm.
That would be a normal thing. So it took me a little bit to get him to understand what I was saying. And he finally went, oh, I understand what you're saying. He was an English teacher. He taught English.
Hmm.
And he goes, and I went like that, and grabbing, and he goes, got it. And so he asked the people, and they said, no, this is a very rare situation here for that to even take place. So I walked back into the house to get something out of my room, and I walked back, and everybody's staring at me. And my friend who was with me, he's pointing. He says, look, Robert, look. He says, a hawk came down right in front of our feet and took one of the baby chicks.
Oh my gosh.
So everybody's just staring. They're stunned that I would ask that question, and moments later it takes place. But yet, it's a rare situation.
Yeah.
They were looking at me, and you could tell they were just full of questions. Well, to me, that meant you need to sit down and you need to go to the Lord right now.
Hmm.
This is so I sat down off by myself, and I told the interpreter, I said, I need to sit, I need to talk to the Lord for a moment. And this is what I said. I said, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.
Hmm.
Sounds familiar, doesn't
Yes,
it?
I love that one.
Well, this is what the Lord spoke. He said, Robert, I'm about ready to send rain upon this land.
Hmm.
I said, you want me to say this? Yes. Well, we met, it was in the country. They were bringing people in by the bus loads from the cities and the towns. And here we are out in the country in this building. They didn't have any windows. Their windows were shutters. and they were all open all the way around me.
Mm.
So little heads were sticking through these little windows, and the place is packed because they're good. Who is this man that has come from so far away? An American
Mm-hmm.
was rare in this place where I
Okay.
was at. So I thought, well, nobody's leaving, so I'm speaking 3 times today, so I'm going to wait till the last time before I bring up about this rain coming.
Right.
And so I waited, and I went over and over and over again, and I was getting no information from the Lord, only that I'd heard, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm supposed to tell these people this, and I'm wondering, how do I do it? I've been put in, I was in lots of situations where I prayed for people, sickness, disease, and all kinds of cool things the Lord would do. But now I'm in a situation that was very, very different. So I asked at the end, I said, I hear you've had a drought for 5 years, no rain.
That's so wild.
And everybody, you could see this whole place, and little heads sticking through these little no window places, and they're all gone.
It's true.
I says, your rain's about to come upon your land.
Mm.
Well, now there's this look on people's faces. Because you know they've been praying and they've been praying, and God will always send somebody that he has already set up, designated to go and take care of a job.
Mm.
But if you go to scriptures, the ones that dealt with the droughts were the prophets.
Yeah.
Just hands down.
True.
I wasn't thinking anything like that when I put
Right.
into this situation. And I'm thinking, I said, aren't you going to tell me how to do this? Nothing. You know why? Because he says, because I know this man. And I know that he won't just pray for rain.
Mm.
There's so much to this as I look back over the years, and I think, wow, you had this so thought out.
Hmm.
And so I said, when the rain comes so far away, I asked that it come from the ocean and make its way to here, inland to your place. When it rains, I asked that it will rain in this way. I became very specific.
Wow.
That it rains 2 days and stops 2 days. And it will rain 2 days and stop 2 days. And it will rain 2 days and stop 2 days until it is wet deep, deep down.
Wow.
That your crops would not be lost, but rather saved.
That's awesome.
Of course, I broke it up for the interpreter as I
Yeah.
went. When I got done, and he says, I got it. And he's just staring at me. And he says, you got it all. And he says, everything. And I says, now I'm going to repeat it.
Wow.
Then he's really staring at me. He goes, why? I says, because I do not want these people to forget what was said here today. Now, one, you have to have a confidence, but I would rule out the word confidence. I would put in, now you're operating in total faith.
Yeah.
Period.
Sure.
You're operating in the gift of faith. In order to speak these things, faith has to come in. First, I received a word of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Then operated in faith. And then, so the next morning we left, went back to the big city. I'm standing in a dead end street on the back of a truck, basically like an evangelist, casting out demons and healing sickness and disease. My friend says, when are we leaving? So we get home, and it's a year later. You got to understand, this is 1996, now it's 1997. I'm in my house and the phone rings. Yes, landline, not cell phones. And it's my interpreter from Brazil. For him to call me or me call him was $1 a minute.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew it was an incredibly big deal for them because I knew this man and he didn't have a ton of money.
Right.
So whatever reason he was calling me had to be huge.
Yeah.
He says, do you remember the state with the drought? I says, how could I forget? He says, I had a man travel the distance back to the big city and find me because he had the information how to find me.
Oh, wow.
And he says, "Well, are you here? Do you want to speak at my church?" He says, "No, I didn't come here to speak. I came here to speak to you face to face." He says, "Because it's so important what I have to tell you, I drove the distance."
Hmm.
He says, "2 days after you left, the rain came."
Hmm.
He said, "But that's all. That man spoke and he said that it would rain 2 days and stop 2 days." And he says, "It continued that pattern." He says, "For weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks
So
and
good.
weeks." He says, "Until it was wet deep, deep down." He says, "And people," he says, the enough
Hmm.
rain came at a time where we were able to harvest something off of our crops." He says, "I've waited a year later purposely to watch the outcome of this." He says, "Our crops are 100% increase across the board, all crops.
Wow.
Our highest mountains
100%.
have snow on top of them. Our rivers are completely full, and the land is lush and green once again."
Yeah. So good.
He says, "But that's not all." And I'm thinking, I have just heard total confirmation, word for word, what was spoken. I says, "This is good enough for me."
Yeah.
He says, "No, but I've saved the best for last." And I'm thinking, my mind's racing. I'm thinking, what could possibly be better than this?
Yeah.
He says, "A revival has
Hmm.
spread across the entire state."
Wow.
He says, "And here's how it happened. The people that were there began to speak when the pattern began to be laid down." He says, "Tomorrow it will not rain."
Hmm.
They were so convinced. He said, 2 days on, 2 days off. It is, how do you know? And the word was so simple and so straight. They would just repeat the word. They said, "This is what he said. This is what's happening." And he says, the people says, "We were ready to lose our business until this rain came.
Wow.
What must we do to be saved?"
Yes.
Now you think about it. It wasn't about me, but God chose me to take care of a situation. He says, this is the perfect person to put into these different scenarios.
Right. Your sphere of influence.
Then I'm driving. I had my greenhouse business at that time, and I'm driving home along a country lane on the mountains, and I'm thinking, Lord, this is the most beautiful news I've heard in years, and I'm thanking Him. And what else could I do? I'm just saying thank you, thank you, thank you
Yeah.
for allowing me to do it. It's too bad. And then I go, too bad about that stadium thing. And I barely got it out of my mouth. And I could tell you where I was on the road to this day.
Yeah, I have those moments.
And he said, "Robert, know this. I did more concerning your word about the drought than if you'd have filled the stadium over 10 times and gave your best message." Now that sounds like God.
Wow.
And
That's
what
a
he
good
was saying to
lesson.
me, he says, "I have over 100,000 people in 1 year that came to me because you did what you were supposed to do."
Wow.
So then I
Yeah,
started
wow.
changing my mind about, well, let's see here. Who in the world am I?
Yeah.
Now, the whole problem, what I see in the body of Christ for the most part, is we do not know who we are. We don't know our identity.
Preach it.
And I don't think that this would be complete if I didn't. I always add the next story to it before I go in what I feel like the Lord is saying for our country.
Mm-hmm.
I take it pretty serious
Yeah.
when somebody asks me, "Well, what do you think?" It's not what I think.
Right.
Um, to speak in this drought I was talking about, uh, your neck's on the line. If you do something wrong, people will never forget it. They'll never forget it.
Right.
If you
If
do
it's
something
wrong.
really, really good, they eventually forget.
Yeah.
Unless you have it in a book or it's recorded or
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to lead out what I believe the Lord is saying, it's going to sound almost opposite of what you think can be. maybe little inroads on others.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, God can do a whole lot in just one day.
That's true.
And when we look at it as we go, our country's a mess. This is impossible. I don't see how things continue. And people are going, this is going to be a year of turmoil. Stop. I don't believe it. If you keep talking like that, I'm sure there will be turmoil. It might be in your own life. But here's what the word that he's given. He says, this year, he says, hey, this is going to be a grace bucket. Now, isn't that an unusual word? A grace bucket. Well, when I was a kid back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of people, if you were back in that time, you would be able to relate to this. But if you're not, I'll bring you up to it. So there was, everybody knows what beans are.
Yeah.
But now they're all picked by machine. But at that time, they called them pole beans. And there were stakes put in the ground, and a wire would go over the top of it, and there would be beans between these rows of stakes. And you tied a string over the wire and down, loop it around the bean and back up again, and down around the bean and up again. And most people today have never even heard of such a thing. The nickname for it was string beans.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why they got the name, because they climbed up a string. Well, during that time, before they switched to the bush beans and picked by machines, we would go in with a bucket. And we would go down our row of beans, and we would pick buckets. We'd take our buckets and put the beans in it. And when it was full, we would put them in a big burlap bag. And then we'd pick another bucket. And let me say, it took a while to do it.
Yeah.
There were some people that were so fast, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. You're that quick, and you could fill that bucket. So it was you'd fill your one, and then they had a tripod where they weighed the beans. And the scale hung from a tripod. And you'd hang your burlap bag on, and they'd weigh it, and they'd have a ticket, and they would punch the ticket, showing you how much your weight was. And so it gave you credit for what you had done.
Right.
Well, this is what I believe the Lord is talking about. He says that there is, the scales are set up for the country, and things are being weighed out. But because of who he is, he says, a grace bucket. He says, but the bucket is only full for so long. He said, but I'm going to pour out my grace on this country. So when people are given the negative, I'm saying the God that I know, who can take 8 years and no rain, specifically say how I'm going to do it, and boom, and he does it. I says, he can change a whole lot in this country, and he can do it in just one day. I get pretty tired of hearing the negative thing. I says, what kind of God are we serving?
Yeah.
And so there is, I had written down a few things.
You want some water or anything?
No, I'm good. Okay. But the Lord is aligning himself with us, and we're switching directions in this country. We're about to switch. We're about ready to switch the directions. The Lord is about to pour out an abundance on this land.
Yes.
There's an abundance that's coming, and the bucket has been weighed on the scales. The process has already coming into it. So that's why I talked about the bucket in with the beans. The bucket's full. It's being weighed on the scales. And in this country, there's a great wanting. There's a great wanting, and God knows that. And he wants to pour out his grace, and it's being poured out, I think, shortly this year. He will begin to pour out his grace. And people that have been opposed to you in whatever way, people that were thinking the complete opposite of you, will begin to change their minds.
That'll be interesting.
Those who they will actually, many will begin to align themselves right with you and say, you know what, that's wrong. I can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's just completely. I, I don't believe in it anymore.
Mm.
There's going to be
Let
that
it be so.
where they were believing in something was false, and their eyes are going to be opened in this country.
Yes. Yes.
And so the Lord is going to. You have to watch. The enemy is going to be poured out also for everyone to see. Everyone's going to see what the enemy's been doing, and it'll be obvious to even those who thought they were okay but were not. And they're going to go, "Oh my, I can't do that," and they're going to walk away. Romans 1:29 says, "And they were filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity."
Mm.
In the book of Daniel, chapter 5, we know about the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The writing on the wall is where we're at right now. That's where we're at right now in this country. And so as that writing, and it's interesting because it uses the word mean. And that means that God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. I don't need to go into what that means. I'm just speaking what the word says, and that's for this nation this year.
Mm.
Word next one is Tekel. My name is he says you've been weighed on the scales and you found wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had to weigh those beans, but once they were weighed, they were poured into a big wood box, a great big one. We called them tote boxes. The beans were poured out
Mm-hmm.
so that you could fill up again. God is pouring it out. He's going to
Yes.
pour it out.
Yes.
He's pouring his grace out. And what can the enemy do? He says he can do nothing. Because when I pour out that much grace, he has nothing to do but fall. And so that's the way it's going to be. They're on right now. Everything's being weighed on the scales, and it will not change.
Yeah.
And the last one, Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. There's going to be a division in the party. It's going to be the one party is going to be split in two divisions.
Mm.
I don't need to tell you what party that is. There's going to be two parts to it. And that means when you divide something, what happens? Your strength is cut in half.
Yeah, true.
So the party that thinks they're in control but is not, there will be a division in the party, and there will be two parts to it. So the ruling party's reign is going to come to an end for several years. Now, chapter 6 of Daniel is the den of lions.
Love that story.
There's one that's been put in the den of lions that will emerge from the den of lions.
Mm-hmm.
Mark these words. He will come out of the den of lions without a scratch, and there will not be a hair out of place. Mm. And he will once again stand upon his feet, and the scales will once again be balanced for this country. And that's my word for this year.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay.
I felt the Lord on that, and just it's encouraging too, because I do feel a lot of prophets that we hear can tend, like you said, to get pretty negative, and I don't know why, because maybe they forget to read into the New Testament, but there's always hope. As long as God is on the throne, there's always hope. And I just appreciate your perspective and your willingness to really say whatever the Lord shows you without trying to water it down or make it your own message or expound on it and add all this stuff that you're suddenly swirling. Which part is God? Which part's real? Is it, And you said in one of the first story, like making it simple and straight. And I've noticed that, like, I've been on a journey with the Lord and finding out what he's put inside of me and how I help equip the body and all the stuff. But I've noticed that actually sometimes the most profound words that I've received, like prophetic word or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is the simple, straight to the heart, very direct, and it just sticks. And you know when it's the Lord. And then sometimes you receive a word and it's kind of like they just keep adding and adding and adding. And pretty soon you're like, I'm not sure where this word is going, or, what it even, how do I even receive this or whatever. But that just hit me when you said that. And then some of the things you were saying in the first story, I feel like you were also prophesying over now, over America, that um, things can change in one day.
Mm-hmm.
God is going to be doing some amazing things that we're going to start seeing that unfold, and we are seeing it. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't see going on, but it's happening. And then rain is about to come on this land. When you said that, I really
Mm-hmm.
felt that
Yep.
in the Holy Spirit rain, and just the purifying, the cleansing, and bringing in the things that He's doing. And also, I was encouraged because I've asked the Lord about this year, and I had heard 555, and I heard grace upon grace. And I think it's John 1:6, where it is grace upon grace, pretty much. And I was excited to hear that because, when you look at the media and the news and all of the things, it's so much negative and bad news and wars. But I was just like, Lord, I believe you. Like, in the midst of all of that, He can change everything. And there are hungry people, people that are listening, people that are willing to actually say yes to whatever
Mm-hmm.
it looks like, whatever He's doing. And it's very powerful, way more powerful than we realize sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's encouraging just to hear, your stories and your willingness and how God uses that. And of course, the stadium that was supposed to be 10,000 and only 300, I mean, that immediately makes me think of Gideon's army. He had to like
Mm-hmm. 300.
whittle it down, whittle it down, whittle it down. So he knows what he's doing. And he even tests our character in those moments and our yes. Are you really still willing to say yes when no one else is with you, or when no one else understands and odds are all against you? Numbers don't line up,
Nope.
no views, whatever the case. Do I still have your yes, Jessica, Robert? Do I still have your yes? And yes, I can 100% say yes. And I know your yes is there to the Lord for whatever He asks of you.
Well, we serve a God who still creates.
Mm-hmm.
We'll always be able to make something out of nothing.
That's so true.
And that's the situation as I so many times it seems he puts me into, is that I have no choice. Do I believe or do I not? I mean, I've seen too much. How could I not uh, believe that he can change this country?
Mm-hmm.
If if I say he's going to do it, then I believe he's going to do it. If I believe he's speaking to me about a grace bucket, then he's saying, things are being weighed out already. It's already being on the scales. Things are being weighed,
Mm-hmm.
and the plan is in effect. The
Yeah.
plan is already laid out. We just have to align ourselves with him. And so I don't like really speaking into the future, but I've done it and I've watched the results.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you asked me to come here, first that thought in my head was no. But um, I'm glad I did.
Me too. Thank you.
And I'm hoping that as people do look at this, I mean, some of probably maybe you've heard these stories. I have a lot more stories
I'm
beside these,
sure
but
you
those are
do.
kind of like, those are signature moves. Those are what makes a mark.
Right.
And those what, dealing with the title prophet or whatever really set the deal with me,
Right.
and also the raising of the dead. So he seems to do it in a way where it's not back to back with me.
Mm-hmm.
And just when big things would begin to happen for me, he'd shut it down. And a lot of people would wonder, well, what's the deal with that? And I would like to finish with that.
Mm-hmm.
That he said, I can give you people's names right now. I can give you numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He said, only the name exists. He said, but my power is no longer with them.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I don't want that to happen to you, so I've held you back on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and I've saved you for the end of all things,
Mm-hmm.
which is really hard for me. Uh, and he said that I'm going to be using you for things that have not even been seen on the face of this planet. And he said that's the main reason I've held you back,
Mm-hmm.
so that you could be integrated, you could be taught these many different facets of how I work. The Lord doesn't just work in one way. Some
Yeah.
people, it's all about miracles and healings. I love miracles and healings. I'm all for that. But there's so much more.
Yeah.
We have the people that help, the people that are the helpers. They should probably be given the greatest credit of
Reward.
all.
Yes.
Without them, it's all over with.
Yes.
So we always look at the big things. And as I go on, I'm looking at more of the small things, because
Yeah.
as small as a mustard seed.
That's good.
The small as a mustard seed is what I can say to that mountain. I can say to that tree, you need to be uprooted and cast in the sea. And that's finished with this. And those who are harming the little ones on this planet, I tell you, you're going to be cast into the sea. And that's how I would end it. So there you go.
Well, there you go.
I'm done.
Yes, thank you so much. And I guess we will end on that note. Thank you so much for listening. And would you want people to be able to reach out to you or contact you in any way? Do you
I'll let
have
them do it through you.
through me?
So
Okay.
I, I see that as another thing that's coming up, to where it'll have to be that way.
Okay.
So
Well, I am honored to have you here today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for just sharing your heart and being willing to let me glean from you and to share with others. And I know that people watching will actually, if you can receive what is being shared here, there's a lot to receive in this. So you might even want to re listen and hear again what God has for you from what was just shared today. And those who can receive a prophet in the name of the prophet can receive a prophet's reward. And that is, I take that very seriously. And I have been very much blessed to receive Robert, the gift that he is, because he is that gift. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have an amazing day today. Thank you so much, Robert.